Om Tat Sat. Welcome to Gyan Bhakti. We are currently studying the scripture Mysticism of Ramayana. Commentary is by my worshipful Guruji, Swami Jyotirmananji Maharaj, narrated by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. We are currently studying the Sundar Kand, and we were on the episode of Hanuman's crossing the ocean, and the story with Surasa mountain extending her mouth, and Hanumanji trying to become food where she wanted to eat him up. But Hanumanji quickly increased his size. So Surasa grew to 16 miles, Hanumanji expanded it to 32. This pattern continued as Surasa went on extending the diameter, and Hanumanji continued to double himself in size until Surasa's mouth reached an enormous proportion. At this point, the clever Hanuman assumed a very small size and entered into the mouth of Surasa. There he jumped into her tongue, pranced around a bit, and then quickly exited as he called out, "O mother, I have done what you wished. I have entered your mouth." Hearing this, Surasa tried to contract her mouth and to gobble Hanumanji, but she could not do so quickly enough, and Hanuman jumped free of her jaws. Seeing that Hanuman had succeeded in tricking her, Surasa then said to him, "O Hanuman, I didn't really come to eat you up. I simply came to test your strength, and you have passed the examination. You are endowed with immense energy, skill, intelligence, and wisdom. Surely you are going to accomplish Rama's mission." Thus, having blessed Hanuman, Surasa withdrew herself, and Hanuman continued on his way with great eagerness and delight. So let's consider the mystical meaning of this episode. As Hanuman's encounter with Surasa suggests, an aspirant must overcome the temptations presented by the world of pleasures. The unconscious basis of the mind's longing for pleasures is Surasa, the mother of snakes. Snakes are symbolic of the thought waves or vrittis which flow towards the pleasures of the senses. As these thoughts relentlessly pursue the objects of the world, they bring about worries and anxieties that devour one's aspiration. The world of pleasure and comfort extends before an aspirant as he attempts to proceed on the spiritual path, and it becomes a great obstruction. Even opening its mouth wider and wider, the world of temptation is eager to gulp the sadhana shakti, the power of spiritual discipline within the sadhak or aspirant. If an aspirant succumbs to worldly temptations, spiritual movement becomes thwarted. Therefore, he must adopt a twofold approach to prevent this from happening. First is the stage of facing the challenges head on, fighting them, becoming stronger than they are. As the world of temptation opens its mouth wider and wider, so to speak, one must increase his willpower more and more so that he is always above his circumstances. If an aspirant has spiritual insight and strength combined with inner stability, then he becomes larger than the situations he encounters and cannot be engulfed by them. Rather, he baffles the world of temptations and outwits it. When self-effort has become truly effective, the second phase of outwitting Surasa begins. At this point, the soul relaxes and true spiritual humility develops. One lets go of his ego sense through divine surrender and becomes too humble for the world of pleasure to devour him. Rather, through surrender to God, he simply slips through the mouth of the world and moves on with spiritual sadhana. Therefore, the secret of overcoming temptations lies in self-effort blended with surrender to God. Like Hanuman, an aspirant who is endowed with spiritual energy develops enough flexibility to elude the grasp of the world. Then the very world that was ready to engulf him by its temptation now blesses him. When Hanuman resumed his flight across the ocean, he quickly encountered another obstacle. The shadow demoness is this episode. So her name was Singhani, who dwelled unseen in the depths of the ocean. From below, Singhani watched the surface of the water for the shadow of creatures flying overhead. Whenever she saw such a shadow, she would grab it with her special powers, and then the creature would be caught along with its shadow. In this way, Singhani would devour anything that passed over the ocean waters, like the kind of ancient Bermuda Triangle. Thus, as Hanuman was coursing through that region, Singhani grabbed his shadow, and suddenly Hanuman found that he could no longer fly. Realizing that the demoness was waiting for him below with open jaws, Hanuman plunged into the ocean and swiftly destroyed her. Mystical meaning: every individual who is not enlightened creates a shadow of his real self as he journeys through the world process. This shadow is a fictitious concept of who he is. It is the erroneous belief that I am this body and egoistic personality. This fictitious concept of one's identity is anchored in the unconscious by subtle, impure impressions and desires. These are called Ashubh sanskaras and vasanas, symbolized by the demoness Singhini. Thus, like the creatures flying over the ocean in the story, every aspirant is caught by his own illusions as long as impure impressions are allowed to predominate in the unconscious. Bound by raga and dvesha, attachment and hatred, which are born of ignorance, he is drowned in the world process and cannot soar towards enlightenment. However, when sadhana shakti or human develops in his personality, he has the spiritual strength to destroy the demoness. So Hanumanji developed sadhana shakti, strength. That's how he was able to destroy, to probe the depths of his unconsciousness through reflection and meditation, root out the impure impression, and find out the true answer to the question, who am I? This is the real journey of a spiritual aspirant. As Hanumanji's encounter with Mount Menaka, Surasa, and Singhani suggest, the strength of an aspirant must be well tested on the spiritual path. Only if you deserve liberation will you get it. The divine plan does not permit weakness in the heart of an aspirant. One has to pass through all the tests that will come. Nature wants your entire personality to be integrated and established securely in every level of advancement. So let's move to the next episode. Hanuman enters Lanka and encounters demoness Lankini. After destroying demoness Singhini, Hanumanji completed his flight and finally reached the far shore of the ocean. He then climbed to the top of a great mountain to get a better view of Lanka, the capital of Ravana. The city was surrounded by a great wall to protect it from outside attack. Its palaces were made of gold and studded with jewels and diamonds, and there were wonderful gardens, orchards, and lakes. Everywhere the soldiers and servants of Ravana, who included demons, human beings, gods of the heavenly world, and representatives of all other living beings, moved about taking care of their duties. How, thought Hanuman, am I to enter and move around undetected so that I can explore the city and locate Sita? Then he came up with a clever plan. He would shrink himself down to small size and enter Lanka at night. In that miniature form, sheltered by darkness, he would begin his explorations. So we will cover this beautiful episode in tomorrow's satsang. This is Swami Nikhilanand. Om Tat Sat.